When I was a young man growing up, my dad had a reputation of repairing everything. He didn't throw anything away. I remember one time Mom had an old washing machine that even as a young man I recognized that it was an antique compared to everybody else's. You couldn't get parts for it anymore, but he made parts for it and put that thing back together, and much to Mom's dismay, she did not get a new washing machine. In order to do that, he had a lot of tools. I still own a green metal toolbox that's Dad's, and all the tools had to be in there just a certain way or you couldn't close the lid. I was allowed to use those tools. I was never able to put them back to suit him. Every time I had worked on something, he would dump it and put them back. And I remember that those tools were Craftsman tools. In that day, that name meant something. I don't know if it still does or not, but it was a brand that was reliable. You could use a wrench for your whole lifetime, and you could pass it down to your sons and grandsons, and it was still a usable tool. One time, a salesman came to our door when we were just married and wanted to show us a vacuum sweeper. And in exchange for that, he was going to give me this big box of tools, which he did. They were shiny, they were beautiful. They were good for exactly one use, and then they were not fit to use again. They were junk. And that's so often how a free gift is. And we view free gifts that way, don't we? The Bible uses that terminology about our salvation, that it's a free gift from God. And to a large extent, that's the way the world treats it. It's a free thing. It's a throwaway thing. It has very low value, and I have zero expectations from it. We've been going through the book of James on Wednesday nights. And a couple of weeks ago, Kevin talked to us about not just reading these words, but being doers of them. It can't just be something that we know. It's something we do with our lives in order for it to have any value. And then Mike talked to us last week about how, based on the way I act, the way my behavior is, my religion can become worthless. Which is a scary thought, isn't it? To know that you can have religion, maybe even be faithful to it in your own eyes, and yet it's a worthless thing. It has no value. And so right immediately on the heels of that, verse 27 gives us this contrast. Religion that is pure and undefiled, that'd be not worthless, right? That's the opposite of worthless. It's something pure. It's something perfect. Pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this: to visit the orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. I'd like to make 3 observations about that. It's religion that is pure and undefiled before the Father. Not according to my judgment. Not according to Dennis's judgment when he comes to talk to me about my behavior. It's before our Father in heaven. He determines if it's pure and undefiled. And the instructions that we're given in order for our religion to have that kind of value is that we should do a couple of things. I don't think this is an exhaustive list. I think these are examples of how you ought to behave. And the first one is visit the orphans and widows in their afflictions. Why would he tell us, of all the people in the world that need help, to visit the widows and the orphans? I think possibly he's talking to us about the fact that these are people that are hopeless. They don't have any way to solve their own problems. And wouldn't that be becoming Christ-like if we solve problems for people that cannot solve their own? Isn't that what he did for us? We had no way to pay back for our sins, and he solved that problem for us and paid the way for us. He also may be referring to the fact that these are people that you're not going to expect that they're going to repay you. They're not going to be giving you any reward for what you've done, other than maybe some cookies from the widow would be about as close as that would come. It's just something you do because it's the right thing to do. And I think that's instructing us to learn to follow Christ's pattern, to learn to do what he does. And then to keep oneself unstained from the world. You know, every free gift comes with expectations, doesn't it? Even those junk tools that I received. The expectation was I was going to sit on the couch and be quiet for an hour or two while he showed me all of the glorious properties that vacuum sweeper exhibited. And there are expectations when you receive a valuable gift too, aren't there? When you receive that salvation, the Lord expects that we're just not going to be like the people around us. We're going to come out from the world, we're going to be separate, and we're going to keep ourselves from looking like the people in the world. We're not going to be stained the way they are. The greater the gift, the greater the expectations. That's really the end of my lesson. But I have one more thing I want to observe from this chapter for you because it causes so much confusion in the world today. These are not instructions for the church. These are instructions for each of us as individuals. I went back and I looked through this previous paragraph in the Bible, and I counted over 15 times where he uses terminology that references one individual. It's terminology like this: no one, each person, his own desires, every person, yourselves, a man, himself, he, one, this person, anyone, oneself. Over and over and over, he points out, I'm giving individual instructions for you. So in the instructions that are given in this chapter, even if your congregation where you attend is actively doing these things, that doesn't cover your responsibility. Those are responsibilities for the individual Christian, for you and I to step up and to try to be like Christ and do the things that he would do in our situation. And if we do it wrong, our religion can be worthless. So as we end and as we sing the song, I want you to think about these two things. Am I stained by the world? And am I helping those that cannot help themselves?